You need to understand when you step back, you don't lose them, you reveal them. And that is one of the hardest truths for your heart to accept. Because for so long, you believed that if you stopped trying, if you stopped reaching out, if you stopped holding everything together, the connection would fall apart because you were the one keeping it alive. And in a way, you were right. You were carrying more than your share. You were filling in the silence. You were translating distance into hope. You were turning inconsistency into something you could still believe in. But what you didn't realize is this: the moment you step back, the moment you stop doing all of that, you are not destroying something real. You are uncovering what was real all along. You are removing your effort from the equation, and when your effort is gone, only their truth remains. And that truth is not something you can control, not something you can shape, not something you can fix. Because when you were constantly present, constantly available, constantly trying to make things work, they never had to show you who they really were without your support. They never had to sit in the discomfort of losing you because you never fully left. They never had to question their own behavior because you were always there to soften it, to explain it, to make it easier to stay the same. And I know there is a part of you that feels guilty for stepping back, a part of you that feels like you are being distant, like you are giving up, like you are doing something wrong. But you need to understand, stepping back is not abandonment. It is clarity. It is the moment you stop interfering with the truth and allow it to reveal itself. Because love does not need to be forced to survive. Real connection does not depend on one person doing all the work. And if something can only exist when you are constantly holding it together, then it was never balanced to begin with. When you step back, something shifts, not just in them, but in the entire dynamic. The space that is created is no longer filled by your effort. The silence is no longer softened by your words. The distance is no longer bridged by your presence. And in that space, they are left with a choice. Not a dramatic choice, not one they announce, but a quiet one that happens in moments you will never see. Do they notice your absence, or do they continue as if nothing has changed? Do they feel the shift, or do they ignore it? Do they move toward you, or do they remain where they are? And that choice is everything, because it tells you what their natural response is when you are no longer compensating for them. It tells you whether they are capable of stepping forward when you step back. It tells you whether the connection had mutual effort or if it was sustained mostly by you. And I know this is where your heart starts hoping that they will notice, hoping that they will come closer, hoping that your absence will finally make them realize what you meant to them. And sometimes they do notice. Sometimes they feel something shift. Sometimes they even think about reaching out. But you need to understand, noticing is not the same as choosing. Feeling something is not the same as acting on it. And this is where the truth becomes clear. Because if someone truly values you, your absence does not just make them think. It moves them. It pushes them to act, to reach out, to show up in a way that reflects what you mean to them. But if they remain distant, if they stay silent, if they do nothing, then that is also an answer. Not a loud one, not an obvious one, but a clear one. It tells you that without your effort, the connection does not sustain itself. It tells you that without you carrying it, it does not move forward. And that realization can hurt because it forces you to see something you may not have wanted to see. It forces you to accept that what you felt so strongly may not have been matched in the same way. It forces you to let go of the version of them you held on to, the version that you believed would eventually meet you where you stood. But at the same time, it gives you something powerful. It gives you clarity. And clarity, even when it is painful, is a form of freedom because it removes the confusion. It removes the guessing. It removes the endless cycle of trying to understand someone who is not showing up clearly. You need to understand, stepping back is not losing your chance with them. It is discovering whether there ever was a real chance to begin with. It is finding out if they are willing to meet you halfway, or if they were comfortable staying where they were while you did all the work. And once you see that, once you truly see it, something inside you begins to change. You stop chasing. You stop over-explaining. You stop trying to prove your worth to someone who is not stepping forward to meet it. You begin to understand that love is not supposed to feel like something you have to constantly hold together by yourself. because the right connection does not fade when you step back. It steps forward. It meets you. It shows up without needing to be pulled, without needing to be reminded, without needing to be convinced. So if stepping back creates distance, if it creates silence, if it creates nothing from their side, then that silence is not your failure. It is your answer. It is the truth that was always there, just hidden behind your effort, your patience, your willingness to keep trying. And now, for the first time, you are not covering that truth, you are seeing it. And even though it may hurt, even though it may not be what you hoped for, it is what you needed to understand. Because you were never meant to lose yourself trying to keep someone who does not step forward when you step back. You were meant to be met, not chased, not proven, not carried, but met with the same energy, the same intention, the same willingness to build something real. You need to understand the moment your energy is no longer chasing, they are forced to face what they actually feel instead of what they avoid. And that shift is far more powerful than anything you could ever say to them. Because for so long, your presence gave them somewhere to hide. Your effort softened the truth. Your consistency covered their inconsistency. Your willingness to keep reaching out allowed them to never fully confront the impact of their distance. When you were the one texting first, checking in, asking questions, trying to understand, trying to fix, trying to keep the connection alive, they were never truly alone with their own behavior. They never had to sit in the full reality of what it feels like to not show up. They never had to experience the absence of you in a way that made them reflect deeply. Because every time the distance started to grow, you closed the gap. And I know why you did it. You did it because you cared. You did it because silence made you uncomfortable. You did it because you believed that if you just tried a little more, loved a little deeper, stayed a little longer, something would change. But what you didn't see is that your chasing wasn't bringing you closer. It was allowing them to stay exactly where they were. Because when someone is avoidant, distance feels safe to them. It gives them control. It allows them to stay connected without being fully present. And when you chase, you unintentionally support that pattern. You make it easier for them to keep 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You make it easier for them to receive without fully giving. But the moment you stop chasing, the moment you pull your energy back, something shifts that they cannot ignore. The space that you used to fill is now empty. The messages that used to come from you are no longer there. The emotional effort you once carried is no longer covering the silence. And for the first time, they are left alone with that space. And that space does something powerful. It removes the distraction. It removes the comfort of knowing you will always reach out. It removes the safety of your constant presence. And in that quiet, they are faced with something they have been avoiding for a long time, their own feelings. Because when there is no one chasing them, they can no longer focus on managing your emotions. They can no longer label you as too much or too emotional as a way to justify their distance. Now there is just them, their thoughts, their memories, their awareness of what has changed. And this is where the hidden truth begins to surface. They start to notice your absence, not just as silence, but as a shift in energy. They start to feel the difference between when you were there and when you are not. They start to remember the way you showed up, the way you cared, the way you stayed even when it wasn't easy. But you need to understand, facing feelings is not comfortable for them. It is unfamiliar. It is something they have spent a long time avoiding. So when those feelings begin to rise, their first instinct is not always to act. It is often to retreat even further. They may distract themselves, fill their time, keep busy, anything that helps them avoid sitting too deeply with what they are starting to feel. Because acknowledging those feelings would mean acknowledging something else, that you mattered more than they allowed themselves to admit, that your absence is not as easy as they thought it would be. And this is where your heart can get confused again. Because you might not see immediate action. You might not receive a message. You might not see them suddenly show up in the way you hoped. And your mind will start asking the same questions. If they feel something, why aren't they doing anything about it? And that question can pull you back into doubt. But you need to understand, their process is not the same as yours. Feeling does not always translate into action for them. Awareness does not always lead to change. And this is why you cannot base your decisions on what you think they might be feeling. You have to base them on what they actually do. Because the real power of you stepping back is not in making them feel something. It is in revealing whether they are willing to do something about it. It is in showing you whether they can move past their comfort, past their avoidance, past their patterns, and actually meet you where you are. And if they don't, if they feel something and still choose not to act, that is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their limitation. It shows you that even when faced with the truth, they are not ready or not willing to change. And I know that can hurt, because a part of you wanted your absence to wake them up completely, to bring them back with clarity, with effort, with understanding. But the truth is, you cannot force someone to grow by removing your presence. You can only reveal where they stand. And that is why this moment is so important for you, because now you are no longer distracted by the dynamic. You are no longer caught in the cycle of chasing and waiting. You are seeing things for what they are. You are seeing that your energy has value, that your presence made a difference, that your absence creates a shift, and most importantly, you are seeing that someone who truly wants you will not stay still when you step back. Because real connection does not rely on you doing all the work. It responds, it moves, it meets you. It shows effort without needing to be pulled. So you need to understand, when you stop chasing, you are not losing control. You are gaining clarity. You are allowing the truth to come forward without interference. You are giving them the space to either step up or stay where they are. And whatever they choose, that is your answer. Not the words they said before, not the potential you saw, not the moments that gave you hope, but their response when your energy is no longer chasing them. Because love is not proven when you are holding it together. Love is proven when you let go and see who reaches back. You need to understand their response to your absence is the clearest answer you will ever get about their capacity to love you, and that truth is both powerful and painful at the same time. Because for so long, you have been trying to understand them through words, through mixed signals, through moments that felt real and moments that left you confused. You have been trying to piece together a story from fragments, holding on to the good, explaining away the distance, hoping that somewhere inside all of it there was a deeper intention that would eventually become clear. But clarity does not come from what someone says when you are present. It comes from what they do when you are not. And I know that is hard to accept because a part of you still wants to believe in their potential. You remember the way they looked at you on certain days, the way they opened up in rare moments, the way it felt when things were easy, when there was no distance, no confusion, no silence. Those moments felt real, and because they felt real, you held on to them, you built hope around them, you told yourself that maybe that version of them was the truth, and everything else was just fear or timing or something that would eventually pass. But you need to understand, potential is not the same as capacity. Someone can show you glimpses of who they could be and still not be able to consistently be that person in your life. And when you stay focused on those glimpses, you start ignoring the pattern that tells you who they are when things are not perfect, when things require effort, when things require emotional presence. That is why your absence matters, because it removes the illusion. It takes away the moments you are holding on to and replaces them with something much clearer. Their actions when you are no longer there to hold the connection together. When you step back, when you stop reaching out, when you stop initiating, when you stop filling the silence, something very honest is revealed. There's no more guessing, no more interpreting, no more hoping that maybe they will show up differently if you just give it a little more time. There is only what they choose to do. And that choice is not influenced by your words anymore. It is not influenced by your effort. It is not influenced by your patience. It comes entirely from them, from their desire, from their willingness, from their ability to move toward you without being pulled. And I know your heart watches that space closely. It waits. It notices the silence. It wonders if something will change. It hopes that maybe, just maybe, they will feel your absence in a way that moves them to act. And sometimes they might. Sometimes they might reach out. Sometimes they might send a message, check in, try to reconnect. And in those moments, your heart feels something again, a spark of hope, a sense that maybe this is the shift you were waiting for. But you need to understand one moment is not the answer. One message is not the answer. One attempt is not the answer. The real answer is in consistency, in whether they show up again and again, in whether they sustain that effort, in whether they match what you have always been giving. Because capacity is not proven in a single action, it is proven over time. And if they do not show up, if they remain silent, if they continue to stay distant, even when you are no longer there, then that silence is also an answer, not a harsh one, not a cruel one, but an honest one. It tells you that without your effort, the connection does not move. It tells you that without your presence, they are not choosing to create one. And I know that can hurt deeply because it feels like rejection. It feels like loss. It feels like something you cared about is not being valued in the way you hoped. But you need to understand it is not a rejection of your worth. It is a reflection of their capacity. Because someone who has the capacity to love you, to meet you, to build something real with you, does not stay still when you step back. They feel the shift and they respond. They notice the absence and they move toward it. They do not need to be convinced. They do not need to be reminded. They do not need to be chased. They choose. And that is the difference you have been searching for without even realizing it. The difference between someone who feels something and someone who does something about it. The difference between someone who enjoys your presence and someone who values it enough to maintain it. The difference between potential and reality. You need to understand your heart deserves reality. It deserves something steady, something clear, something that does not leave you questioning your place or your value. It deserves someone who does not make you feel like you have to earn consistency or prove your worth or fight for basic emotional presence. And when you look at their response or their lack of response through that lens, something begins to shift inside you. You stop asking, why are they like this? And you start asking, is this enough for me? You stop trying to understand their behavior and you start honoring your own experience. Because your experience matters. The way you felt matters. The way you were treated matters. And you are allowed to take that truth seriously, even if it means letting go of the story you were hoping for. And I know letting go is not easy. It is not something that happens in a single moment. It is something you move through slowly, sometimes painfully, sometimes with doubt, sometimes with a part of you still holding on. But every time you choose to see the truth instead of the illusion, you move a little closer to freedom, because the answer has already been given to you, not in words, not in promises, but in their response to your absence. And that answer is not there to hurt you, it is there to guide you. It is there to show you what is real, so you no longer have to live in confusion. And when you accept that, when you truly accept it, you stop waiting for something that is not coming in the way you need it. You stop investing in something that is not investing back into you. You stop holding on to someone who is not holding on to you in the same way. And in that space, something new begins, something honest, something grounded, something that starts with you choosing yourself, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself enough to not ignore what their response has been showing you all along.